Good evening and welcome everybody. I do apologise for the change of program for today because our illustrious leader, Warren, has taken ill. So please, let's all wish him well for the moment. All right, we are the Young World Choir, and thank you to the Initiatives of Change for allowing us to use their magnificent venue for this procedure. Now, firstly, we are going to do things, because we don't have musical accompaniment, we're going to do things a little bit differently. We're going to be doing a cappella, which is going to be really wonderful when you hear our
poignant voices.
Our wonderful angelic voices, as I was going to say. But first, let us do an acknowledgement to country. I acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we are meeting. I pay my respects to their elders past and present, and the Aboriginal elders of other communities who may be here today. And now I will switch it to Mark from the Initiatives of Change, who will say a few words.
A Wominjeka, everyone, Wominjeka. Welcome. So thanks so much. And when I heard that the power was down and that Warren wouldn't be here because he's very, very ill, I was quite devastated, like all of you. And then I walked in here to see all these smiling faces and people just going, you know, let's make it happen anyway. And we put the candles out and thought, okay, if we've got to do it with just by fake candlelight, that will work too. So good on you for having this incredible attitude, right, just to keep going. We love it when Warren and the Young World Choir come here. We absolutely love it because it's always so joyful. And now the Tongley alumni have joined in. Right, so we're really looking forward to tonight. I'm the Executive Officer here at Initiatives of Change, and ARMA is our beautiful Australian Pacific Centre. And I've been asked just to share a quick little word about this house and the history behind it, just for one quick minute. So the house in 1956 was a family home, and it belonged to Cecil and Marjorie Mackay of Sunshine Harvesters. When they went to sell the home, a very small ragtag bunch of do-gooders came to them and said, we'd like to buy it off you. And they offered next to nothing. And they were laughed out of the place, as you can imagine. 3 weeks later, they were given an envelope with a key in it. And the message that said, from Cecil and Marjorie Mackay, we understand the work that you do that is for the good of this country and the good of the world, and we're offering you our home to become your centre. It's the most beautiful philanthropic gift, and you know we encourage philanthropy, right? We encourage that kind of attitude to keep going because it's how this kind of work continues. So welcoming you all, we are trust builders and peace builders in this world. God knows the world needs peace builders. Thank you to you all, and I'll hand you back to the Young World Choir. Thank you. Sorry, I didn't explain that very well. Yeah. We're called Initiatives of Change, and at that stage they were called Moral Rearmament. Yeah, Moral Rearmament. They believed after World War I and World War II, you should arm the world with morals and not with guns. Which pretty well stands today. Cecil and Marjorie. The Polish group come here. We better let these, I'll come and chat with you later. Thank you.
Okay, now without further ado, I'm going to ask Stefan to take us to lead up to the microphone and give you a little bit of an explanation about what's happening here.
Like the initiatives of change, we also believe that there are better ways where people can communicate, stretch out their hands to each other, reach out to help each other, support each other and work together, not against each other. And tonight is called a night of building bridges, because we want to build bridges and communication with all cultures and all peoples here in Australia and around the world. We're also commemorating not the night of building bridges, but the night of broken glass, Kristallnacht. It's the 85th anniversary of Kristallnacht, literally crystal night. It sounds so pretty, crystal night. But the crystal was broken shards of glass from destroyed and ruined buildings that were attacked because the people were Jewish. So Kristallnacht occurred on the 9th and 10th of November 1938 in Germany, where paramilitary forces, the Nazi Party, members of the Hitler Youth and German civilians throughout Nazi Germany banded together to attack, to kill and to destroy. Shards of broken glass littered the streets after windows of Jewish-owned stores, buildings and synagogues and hospitals were smashed. It was not enough to have just boycotted the shops as had happened previously, to have just made rules that shunned Jewish people or to build anti-Semitism. Now, this happened. The pretext for the attacks was the assassination of the German diplomat Ernst von Rath by Herschel Greenspan, who was a 17-year-old German-born Polish Jew living in Paris. The attackers ransacked and demolished buildings with sledgehammers. Rioters destroyed 267 synagogues throughout Germany and Austria and the Sudetenland. Over 7,000 Jewish businesses were completely destroyed or damaged beyond repair. 30,000 Jewish men were rounded up, arrested, and incarcerated in concentration camps just for being Jewish. There was no event in the history of German Jews between 1933 and 1945 so widely reported as it was happening. But nothing happened to help. Nobody helped. People were killed, businesses were destroyed, lives were destroyed. This was a prelude to the final solution and the murder of 6 million Jews during the Holocaust, and built up from the early Nazi persecutions that were building up strongly from the 1920s. Often, when there is racism or there is attacks on one group of people, it happens slowly, insidiously. People don't even realise what's happening. Small steps, one after the other. First, perhaps, stickers on shops saying this is a Jewish shop. Then, anti-Jewish laws or people talking in the media about Jews in a negative way. Then the exclusion and alienation of Jews from German social and political life. And then Jews trying to leave, to find somewhere they could live safely. And there were countries that didn't allow Jews and some that did. So many Jews fled Germany and Austria before 1938, but it was not enough. There were many Jews that stayed in Poland and Germany despite what they saw was building up, and sadly, as a new radical phase in anti-Semitic activity built up from the government down, from the Nazi government, it led to the final solution and the killing of 6 million Jews. We remember Kristallnacht as a terrible, terrible tragedy, and we want to hope that there will never be another night like this, despite us seeing many tragedies around the world and many persecutions and many horrific events even today. So let's remember Kristallnacht as the night of broken glass, but let us be part of the solution, which is the night of building bridges. And let's all work together to build bridges between peoples and to have all peoples working together for harmony in the world.
The name is Kurt Joachim Wildberg. I'm born in Germany, Munich, in 1929, March 1929. I remember that I went to a school and in my first, or maybe in my second year, Hitler announced that Jewish children had to vacate their classes and they could go to a Jewish school. Our household was not very religious, it was not kosher, but we went to a synagogue. The Nazi Party had their building right opposite the synagogue. Hitler announced that the synagogue will be demolished. The most frightening episode in my life was on Crystal Night. On Crystal Night, that evening, there were phone calls from relations and friends crying that their husbands were taken out and finished up in concentration camps. My father rang up my grandmother's home and said, I'm coming back to pick up Kurt, not my mother or my sister. My father picked me up, and we drove to the railway station. Every Jewish person that was apprehended had to go to the highest ranking officer in the station, in an office area where they were questioned. My father was questioned, and why are you here? My father said, I'm here to take my family to Switzerland. Have you got any ticket to go to Switzerland? And my father said, yes, I have. The commander got a bit cheeky or hasty and said, why are you leaving the country? And my father said, I'm leaving the country because people are being abused, etc. And by the way, I'm a war influence from the First World War. He lost his leg fighting for the fatherland. So he said that we could leave as a family to Switzerland. My father was awarded the Iron Cross fighting for the fatherland in the First World War. He was 17 years of age we got on the train because we had the official papers, and to go to Zurich. The train stopped at the border between Germany and Switzerland. The Gestapo went right through the carriages. Raus! Raus! They picked up the Jewish people that they could find. I remember distinctly, I don't know how many, but I would say there were at least a dozen or more Jewish people lined up on the station. Where did they go? Concentration camp. That's before the war broke out. Well, it was a story of luck, really, because had we had a relation living in Australia, if we wouldn't have had a relation here, we might have been up the chimney.
And now, just to let you know, the next video will be Uncle Lloydie, but first Sephra will also to speak about William Cooper.
This is my last time talking today, so you'll have to hear me now, not any more times. We will hear the choir singing about William Cooper later, and his role is very important in the Kristallnacht commemoration. William Cooper was born 18th of December 1860 or 1861, and he was an Aboriginal Australian political activist and community leader. He was the first to lead a national movement recognised by the Australian government. He was born in Yorta Yorta Territory, which is around the intersection of the Murray and the Goulburn, and most of his life he lived on missions. In fact, he was a very intelligent boy and did very well at school, but had to leave school to work, as many of his family and others there had to too. He became very active only in his 70s particularly and onwards in human rights issues and campaigning for Aboriginal rights and other rights. His long campaign for Aboriginal rights, especially land rights, began with the Malogga petition in 1887. He was one of 11 signatories to the petition addressed to the Governor of New South Wales. And it was the first petition that requested the government seriously grant sections of land, not less than 100 acres per family, to the Aboriginal people who were the former occupiers of the land, so that they could earn their own livelihood, so that they could have a life that wasn't in missions and being repressed. Well into his 70s, he became an activist, organiser and relentless letter writer, sometimes in an individual capacity, but he also helped establish the Australian Aboriginal League and became its secretary, circulating petitions, seeking direct representation in Parliament. So all of these things are familiar to us in years later. Yeah? A campaign doesn't always work when it's first presented to people, and people have to keep fighting. Even now, representation in Parliament and fair representation is something that still needs to be fought for much longer than we thought it ever would be. He collected many, many signatures to petition King George V and felt it was his moral duty to keep petitioning. The government received the petition, but Cabinet decided not to submit it to the King. He also was effective in securing face-to-face meetings with governments and was part of the first Aboriginal deputation to a Commonwealth Minister and the first deputation to a Prime Minister. Each time his requests were denied or rejected, he only had more resolve to fight more and more, to help more and more people understand the needs of his people, and to keep working, despite failure of using every democratic means, to keep working for the rights of Aboriginal people, which people are now still taking on his job today. Not only did he campaign for his own people, but he also protested against Kristallnacht. And today, on the 85th commemoration of Kristallnacht, we remember his role and his courage. On the 6th of December 1938, only less than a month after Kristallnacht in Germany, the Australian Aboriginal League led a delegation to the German consulate in Melbourne to deliver a petition which condemned the cruel persecution of the Jewish people by the Nazi government in Germany. This was largely led by William Cooper, and he was outraged at how people could be treated that way and how a government could allow those things to happen. Even despite what was happening to his own people here, he still stood up to campaign for other people's rights. This protest is often referred to as the only private protest against the Germans following Kristallnacht, and it's fitting that this protest was from somebody who himself was living in a situation of deprivation of his own people. Even though William Cooper achieved few of the goals he'd set in his lifetime, his influence extended to the next generation and the next and the next, and many of his family are still campaigning today for rights, and many in the wider community recognise his contribution. In 2002, a plaque was unveiled at the Jewish Holocaust Centre in Melbourne, now known as the Melbourne Holocaust Centre, to honour the Aboriginal people for their actions protesting against the persecution of Jews by the Nazi government of Germany in 1938. And the story of the protest and William Cooper's role is featured in the Jewish Holocaust Centre's permanent museum. William Cooper's grandson, Uncle Boydie Turner, was presented with a certificate from the Israeli ambassador stating that 70 Australian trees were to be planted in Israel in honour of William Cooper. The ceremony at the State Parliament in Melbourne was attended by many members of the Yorta Yorta tribe, as well as Victorian Premier John Brumby, Federal Indigenous Affairs Minister Jenny Macklin, lawmakers, diplomats and Jewish leaders. 5 trees were also planted in the Forest of Martyrs at a ceremony in Israel to commemorate and remember how much the Aboriginal Advancement League had stood up, and to honour Cooper's brave stance against the oppression of Jews. We will always remember William Cooper's bravery and will always follow him in his footsteps for human rights.
And now, here is the video of Uncle Boydie Turner.
Well, I even remember the photographs of the people, the Jewish people in Germany, when all this was happening. I think over 1,000 people were murdered by the Nazi soldiers, and there were photos in the Argus every day showing their businesses, their homes, and William Cooper got the paper every day. He didn't do anything about it for about some weeks, and then decided that he called a meeting with the league members of the committee, and they decided that they would write a letter of protest. William Cooper's legacy would be that he fought for people, stood up for people, and that came about because of the life he had in the 18th century as a child. I think that after 80 years of nobody knowing what my grandfather William Cooper did, to stick up for the Jews and to also fight for years for his own people. I think that once people find out what he did, they will remember him for quite some time. Yes, I think that he went through times, knockbacks, people not wanting to help, and I think that he would be under the moon to think that people now know what he did in his lifetime. The petition came about. My friend Abe Schwartz and myself worked on this for about 10 years, and we travelled to every state in Australia to put the story out there. And as far as I'm concerned, that story will go further than what it had before. In the next few years, just about everybody will know what William Cooper did for other people.